है? हाँ। आपका भी है? कितने में? वो 11 में। हाँ, आपका है? अभी 12। क्या हुआ? हाँ हाँ, आप ऐसे चले गए वो लग गया यार, इसको वहाँ जाके तुरंत उस रुमाल से करो साफ इसको। अरे आपका हाथ लग गया। हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग। गुड मॉर्निंग। हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग। गुड मॉर्निंग स्टूडेंट। गुड मॉर्निंग। गुड मॉर्निंग। हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग। Am I audible? Hello, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Am I audible or not? Am I audible? Hello. Last call. Am I audible or not? Anybody watching? Then please tell me. Am I audible? Hello. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay. 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 Some students are present. Okay. Now we can start. Today we learn application of derivative. Application of application of derivative. Application of derivative, first chapter, first exercise, increasing and decreasing function. We learn about increasing and decreasing function. What is increasing and what is decreasing function? Okay. What is increasing and what is decreasing function? Listen carefully. We draw two graphs here. First graph like this, and another graph is like this. In this graph, we choose 2 points. Suppose first point here and another point is here. This is x1 and this is x2. First x1, second x2, and this is a functional value at the point x1, and this is the functional value at the point x2. And from these number line, x2 is greater than x1. Okay, we see here x2 is greater than x1, and the functional value at x2 is also greater than functional value at x1. Means this is x1, the functional value x1, x1 is less than x2, and the functional value of x2 is also, functional value of x1 is also less than functional value of x2. इसका मतलब दो पॉइंट हमने चूज करे x1 x2, x2 is greater than x1, तो x2 पे फंक्शन की वैल्यू भी बड़ी है बच्चों. This function is known as strictly increasing function. This function is known as strictly increasing function or increasing function. Similar manner, you see here, this is x1 and this is x2. From number line x2 is greater than x1, functional value of x1 this, and functional value of x2 this. Functional value at x1 is greater than functional value at x2. From this graph x2 तो x1 से बड़ा है, but functional value at x1 is greater than functional value at x2. This is known as बच्चों decreasing function. क्या मैं आपको समझा पाया? Decreasing function and increasing function. This is strictly increasing and strictly decreasing function. It means if we have x2 greater than x1, but the functional value of x2 is greater than functional value of x1, then this is known as strictly increasing. And x2 greater than x1, but functional value at x1 greater than functional value at x2, this is known as the strictly decreasing function. This is known as strictly decreasing function. Okay. Now one more word. Listen carefully. Suppose the graph like this. In this graph, we choose 2 points. First x1 here, another point x2, and x2 is greater than x1, and the functional value at x2 बच्चों is greater than functional value at x1. Okay, but at this point, this is x1 and this is x2 बच्चों. Functional value above x1, functional value above x2. So listen carefully. x2 तो greater than x1 से, but f x2 is equal to f x1 मिल गया, इक्वल वाली वैल्यू मिल गई. तो if x2 greater than x1 but functional value is always greater or equal than x1, fx2 greater equal than fx1, this is known as monotonically increasing function बच्चों. This is monotonically increasing function. This function is monotonically increasing function बच्चों. Now similarly, one more graph like this बच्चों. This, from this graph, this is x1, this is functional value at x1, and this is x2, this value is functional value at x2. We see from the graph x2 तो greater than x1, but functional value at x1 greater than functional value at x2 बच्चों. x2 x1 से बड़ा है, but functional value at x1 greater than functional value at x2. And we take another 2 points. This is x1, this is x2. x2 is greater than x1, but the functional value are equal. fx1 equals to fx2. After summarizing these two concepts, we have x2 is greater than x1, but functional value at x1 greater and equal than x2. Then we say that this is a monotonically decreasing function बच्चों. This function is known as monotonically decreasing function. One more time, listen carefully. This graph says x2 is greater than x1. The functional value at x2 is also greater than functional value at x1. It means this is the definition of strictly increasing function. In the same manner, x2 greater than x1, but functional value at x1 greater than functional value at x2. उल्टा हो गया, x2 x1 से बड़ा है, लेकिन फंक्शन की वैल्यू किससे बड़ी आ रही है, x1 को. Then this is known as strictly decreasing function बच्चों. This function is known as strictly decreasing function. In a similar manner, this is a graph. For this graph, first we choose 2 points like this. From the picture, x2 greater than x1. From this picture, we have x2 greater than x1 and functional value at x2 greater than functional value at x1. Again, we choose another 2 points x2 and x1. From this, x2 is greater than x1 and the functional value at both the point is same. Functional value at both the point is same. It means after summarizing this concept, x2 to greater than x1, but the functional value at x2 is always greater or equal बच्चों. Greater or equal. Greater भी हो सकती है, equal भी हो सकती है. Then this is known as monotonically increasing function बच्चों. This function is known as monotonically increasing function. Ocean. Hi sir, not visible. अच्छा, तो बच्चों similar manner we study this graph. This graph says x1 and x2. We take 2 points x1 and x2 from the graph x2 greater than x1 and the functional value at x1 greater than functional value at x2. Again we take another point here x2 greater than x1, but functional value at these 2 points equal. Functional value as these 2 points equal. So bachcho, after summarizing these two concepts, we have x2 to greater than x1, but functional value at x1 fx1 is greater or equal than fx2. It means this is known as monotonically decreasing function. Monotonically decreasing function. Now for finding the concept question, we use another concept for increasing and decreasing function. Suppose we have given that fx is any function like this, x cube minus 6x square plus 4x plus 8, x square 4x plus 8. We have to calculate the interval where the function is strictly increasing and the interval where the function is strictly decreasing. Bachcho, for such problem, for finding increasing and decreasing, first we calculate derivative of function. When derivative of function greater than 0, we also prove the formula for increasing and decreasing in next class. First we apply these applications in problems. F dash x greater than 0, then we say that my function is increasing, and when f dash x less than 0, then my function is decreasing. less than 0 means negative part and greater than 0 means positive. Now we have a question like this, and we have to calculate the interval where my function is strictly increasing and the interval where my function is strictly decreasing or decreasing. For finding this, first we calculate derivative of my function. What is the derivative? 3x square minus 12x plus 4. This is the derivative of function. Now, again we find the critical point for f dash x equals to 0. What are critical points? Bachcho, listen. Suppose I have a graph like this. My slope of this graph at any point from this to this, and slope of this graph of any point from this to this. This is like in second quadrant. It means graph slope is negative. Negative 1 means slope is negative. Slope negative, not negative 1, negative slope. Because in second quadrant ASTC, second quadrant tan theta is negative and slope is tan theta. And in this graph, slope is always like second quadrant, it means negative, and for this is positive. But at that point, the graph means derivative of my function is equal to 0. At this point, line parallel to x-axis, it means derivative of function is 0. After going from here to here, we have to go positive slope to negative slope. When f dash x put to 0, that's why we say that after putting f dash x equals to 0, we have to find critical point. This is a critical point, a point which change the nature of my graph. A point which change the nature of my graph is known as critical point. Bachcho, for finding increasing and decreasing, we have to calculate first. We have to calculate first what? We have to calculate first derivative equal to 0. So derivative is this, f dash x is this. Now calculate the derivative of this function is equal to 0. It means f dash x equals to 0. It means 3x square minus 12x plus 4 equals to 0. Now after solving these 2 points, we have to find x1 and x2. 3, 12 and this is 4, 24. Suppose this is 24. So 24x, so this will be 24. Now we take 3 as common, so this will be x square minus 4x plus 8 equals to 0. Now after solving this, we get two values of x1, two values of x. So x equals to x is equal to minus b plus minus under root b square minus 4ac. 4ac means 4ac upon 2a. This gives negative zeros, bachcho. So x gives negative values. That's why we cannot say the increasing and decreasing, the interval of increasing and decreasing for this graph. Suppose we have another graph like this, fx equals to 4x square minus 6x. Okay, 4x square minus 6 only. 4x square, okay, 6x. 4x square minus 6x Now we have to calculate the interval of this function where the function increasing and where decreasing. For finding this, supposed to be calculate the derivative. This is 8x minus 6. Now put derivative equal to 0. So x is equal to 6 by 8. 8 means 3 by 4 बच्चों. First we calculate the critical point. First we calculate the critical point, the education finance. Now after calculating critical point, plot this point in number line बच्चों. From here, this is positive and this is negative. x की इस वैल्यू को डेरिवेटिव में आप रखेंगे तो इससे आगे वाला पोर्शन पॉजिटिव आएगा, पीछे वाला नेगेटिव आएगा. Then we say that my fx is increasing when f dash x greater than 0. Where my f dash x greater than 0? In 3 by 4 to infinity. This is the interval where my function is strictly increasing. And f dash x less than 0, this will be strictly decreasing, matlab decreasing. The interval where my function is decreasing is minus infinite to 3 by 4. This is the interval where my function is strictly decreasing. Okay.